Hi friends and welcome to Marvelous Friends, your home for all things Marvel Cinematic Universe and beyond. I'm Rhett, and last week some rumors surfaced about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 that I really think we need to talk about. Roll that credit. On Tuesday, May 7th, a tweet surfaced with a few statements regarding the major plot points for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now, this tweet comes from Roger Wydell, who has in the past provided very accurate information regarding predictions and what have you, which is why this is being treated as a very reliable information source for the leaks and rumors that it provides. The tweet focuses a lot on Rocket Raccoon, claiming that we're going to get some origin stories for the character. This will include a love interest for him as well as learning who created him. We also learn that Drax will find out that his daughter is alive and well, and that also that Nebula and Star-Lord will become closer through the events of the movie. Now, I'm going to talk about each of these in parts, kind of going over them, providing my thoughts, feelings, and predictions based upon this information, based on information we have from the given MCU already, and then what we know from the comics. So we're going to start from the bottom and go work our way back up from that tweet. So we're going to start with Nebula and Star-Lord. Star-Lord and Nebula getting closer. Well, no, duh. Nebula becoming much more humanized and much more of a relatable character is something we have seen very much so to be her trend throughout her story in the Avengers saga. We see her being almost a villain henchman of Thanos, moving to a very close, friendly character that we all really relate to and enjoy as an audience. We saw this first with her and Gamora, mending their very unhealthy and dysfunctional sibling relationship, becoming very close, and what brings Nebula into the fold with the rest of the Guardians. After the snap, we see her and Rocket become very close as they grieve the loss of their friends and family together. Now, this trend only makes sense to continue. As we move forward, the one thing that is confirmed from the MCU is that the major plot point for Guardians 3 is going to be the search for the displaced Gamora, who is MIA following the events of Endgame. So, of course, her and Star-Lord both have very strong ties with Gamora, and they're very close to her and care for her a great deal. So during the events of this search, it only makes sense that they become closer and bond due to that. Now, I will have one caveat to this. I do not want this to become a romantic thing. A lot of times when you see this kind of phrasing about two characters becoming closer, you kind of see that in reference to a romantic tie. When you see this like in a synopsis or a plot point from like IMDb or something like that, that's kind of the inferred way without giving a spoiler that they kind of hint at this. If this is the case, I'm going to be very disappointed. The MCU, of course, really has not explored the ideas of a love triangle in its films. It's a very common use practice in their TV shows, though, but this is not the love triangle I want to see. I think it would be a great something to see in a future movie, just not this whole thing. It's not a relationship I think that would be good or fun to watch as an audience. We are very invested in the Gamora and Star-Lord relationship. So I hope this is just a friendship, almost kind of a close in-laws kind of thing that develops and nothing romantic. Because the last thing I want is true life. I'm in love with my sister's lover who she hasn't even met yet because she's displaced in time. That's not what we're looking for in Volume 3 of Guardians of the Galaxy. Next, let's talk about Drax and his daughter. I do have mixed feelings about this part of it for two reasons. I really think this would be a great direction for the MCU to go in Phase 4, really helping it move forward and introduce some of the new characters. However, it could beat a dead horse. Endgame really focused on the reunion of the snapped characters with the people who survived the snap, and that was a big kind of moment at the end of it, as everyone coming back together. And then we also know that with the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 movie that we're going to be getting a big part of that being the reunion of Gamora with the rest of the Guardians, or at least I hope that's a major part of it, and we get that kind of happy ending finally for Gamora and Star-Lord that's been always kind of teased at, but then something happens and you know the drill with that kind of thing. So that's really what I want. So having yet another happy reunion would kind of be one too many, I think. I think it's really 3 right in a row with this same movie would be too much. And I'm sure we're going to see other reunions throughout this whole phase, and there's only so many we can take per movie. That being said, this would be a very interesting plot point that we again relate to the changes in the timeline and the events of Endgame. Now, so what could have potentially have happened is if Thanos was time displaced and then murdered and then, well, not murdered, killed justly, and never returned back in time, it is potentially possible that he never sent Ronan to the Drax's planet, and therefore his wife and his child never were killed. Drax is just no longer there with them. And so, of course, this is a big assumption on our part as far as timeline goes. We really aren't sure, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but we're not really sure when Ronan, on behalf of Thanos, went to Drax's planet and did the cleansing genocide. So we're not really sure when Drax went on his murder spree and was caught and was sent to jail. We don't know how long Drax was in jail before the rest of the Guardians arrived. So there's a lot of kind of inferring that this would work out timeline-wise. But I think it's very plausible. So, you know, I'm going to go with it for this prediction. So if she's still alive and time has now moved forward quite substantially, it could be very possible that the only reason only she is still alive is that in this meantime, his wife has either passed away due to old age or other natural causes. And so only his daughter is alive. Now, this is something that's very possible because it's also something that regularly happens in the comic books. Very often, Drax's daughter does survive the initial attack from Thanos and is rescued by Mentor. Now, Mentor has a lot of ties to the MCU already and where it is going. Mentor is the father of Thanos, which is very important because I believe that that's going to be a big tie-in because Mentor is one of the, wait for it, Eternals, which is going to be one of the movies in Phase 4. So this would be a huge setup for the Eternals. So basically what happens in the comics is Mentor finds Drax's daughter, saves her, and raises her. She eventually grows up and becomes Moondragon. She is very skilled in martial arts and telepathy. In fact, she's considered to be one of the strongest telepathists? That's not right. Kinetics out there in the comics, and so it would be very and as interesting, especially if this is a Guardians 3 post-credits scene, which is where I'd like to see it. This would be a great setup for Eternals, especially if Eternals is premiering after Guardians Volume 3. Now, we have the dates and we know the movies that are coming out as part of Phase 4, but then we haven't really received, again, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, at this point, an official order of those films, just what days they will be premiering on over the course of the next several years. So again, this is taking a lot of assumption on our part that Guardians will come out before Eternals, and then this would work out perfect. And I hope it is used as a post-credit scene, taking us from Guardians and teasing us to Eternals. Finally, we're going to move on to the two-part rumor about Rocket, him getting a love interest first, and then second about his creator. In the story in the comics, his love interest is Lila, or Lila, I'm not really sure how it's pronounced, and that is the same name that we were given in the tweet about the rumors. Lila is a sentient otter that is considered to be the soulmate of Rocket. She is the heiress of a toy company in space. She receives that fortune after her parents are murdered. Other than that, there isn't a lot of backstory I could find. Honestly, I was not familiar with this character, so I had to do some digging, and the well of knowledge was very shallow and not very giving. This being the case, I could really see the MCU taking her and rounding her out with a lot of backstory and making it a little bit more along the lines of what Rockets will be, having them both being created in the same way, and that's what ultimately brings them together as lovers. Having had major character development in Rocket and seeing his softer side more and more as an audience, the obvious next step in this development is romantic, especially if part 2 of Rocket's rumored plot is in the movie as well. According to the tweet, we will learn that Rocket was created by the High Evolutionary. Once again, we see the introduction of a character that has a lot of pre-existing as well as potential future use within the MCU. The High Evolutionary first starts out on Earth. He is a geneticist who is obsessed with evolution. His obsession is only furthered once he meets a biologist who is inhuman that gives him the genetic code. Now, this is our first major tie-in here. So, Inhumans are very common in the MCU, especially in the TV programs. Up to this point, Inhuman or Miracle is the terms that have been used to describe those who are born with superhuman abilities naturally. This is due to the fact that Fox held the rights to evolution and mutants, and so the MCU cannot use those terms. However, with the MCU merging with the X-Men universe of Fox, due to the Fox and Disney deal, we will start seeing these terms, mutants and evolution, being used as well within the MCU. So this would be a great kind of like lob into that terminology for us. That is kind of just a side point, but something to keep in mind. One of the major tie-ins, though, is the fact that his first experiments following this information that he's given from the Inhuman is that he starts experimenting on animals. In the comics, it's his pet Dalmatian, but this could be very easily turned into a raccoon and an otter, very common earthly creatures that he could have captured and done his initial experiments on. In fact, I would suspect that we will see a little bit more of an advanced version of this kind of experimentation done on Lila. She probably won't have a lot of the robotic implants and stuff like that that we see on Rocket, as has advanced his research post-Rocket, and since Lila, again, these two being the results of these experiments is what would kind of tie them into that Part 1 rumor. Fun fact, the High Evolutionary actually creates a machine called the Genetic Accelerator. A very similar machine is seen in the Season 1 of X-Men Evolution. However, in the cartoon, the machine is created by Magneto, but it is a very similar idea as that it is used the same way. So anyone who has used it on basically advance to the next stage of their evolutionary development. So Magneto uses it to basically enhance the mutants of the Brotherhood and anyone else that he can kind of sway over from Xavier's team. Specifically, Scott and his brother use this in the cartoon. But anyways, I just wanted to point that out. It's a fun fact that we've seen before, and I really loved that show growing up, so I just wanted to throw it out there. Our next tie-in comes from Adam Warlock, someone we haven't actually seen yet in the movies, but is due to make an appearance soon, and potentially in this next Guardians movie. Adam is given the Soul Stone by the High Evolutionary, and then he places him as the protector of Counter-Earth, a sanctuary he creates to be kind of a utopian version of Earth for him to conduct his experiments on. Also, just so you know, moving forward, I'm going to refer to the High Evolutionary as he, as it's the initials of him, and it's a lot easier to say. Now, I will say I don't believe that we will see a reintroduction of the Infinity Stones. I do believe that we are done with those. However, this relationship of Adam Warlock and he would be a great tie-in to how we are introduced to him within this movie. Like I said, we are due to see Adam Warlock. I think he would be a major introductionary kind of villain for us in Guardians 3, as that's what he was set up to be in Guardians 2. So this relationship between him and he would be how all these come together and what leads us down this road to Rocket's origin story. This will take me to kind of my final tie-in, but this is more so kind of like a hopeful prediction if this character is actually introduced, and that is that he becomes very mentally unstable through all these events. He kind of starts off as a scientist, and this kind of progresses, and then it kind of goes too far because he's actually begins experimenting on himself, kind of raising his own evolutionary level, eventually losing his mind and kind of becomes suicidal, returning to Earth with a death wish. Now, I think not necessarily this storyline, but this would be a great use for a villain. I really want to see villains used a lot more in the MCU. They did a great job with Thanos really rounding him out and making him a substantial character out of him and not just making him a one-off villain. So moving forward in the future phases of the MCU, this is what I want to see with our villains just as much as our main hero characters. So having him kind of be the side character, not necessarily the main villain of this movie, but come back later onto Earth, kind of being driven insane by maybe the events in this movie, and seeking out the Guardians and the Avengers and ultimately losing to them would be something that I think would be really great and a great use for this character, considering I don't necessarily see him being the main villain. Also, with the MCU really wanting to push the diversity, this would be great. Of course, the Russos, the same week that this tweet came out, kind of confirmed that one of our pre-existing Avengers is gay and will be coming out soonish. This would be a great way to introduce another MCU character that would be gay. In the comics, the Avenger who ultimately defeats and takes down the High Evolutionary is Hercules. Hercules is a comic book character in the MCU, in Marvel Comics, that is based, of course, on the Greek demigod hero Hercules, but in recent renditions of his story within Marvel, he is very commonly being written as a gay man. So again, more diversity, which is something that MCU really wants to do, and they have been really pushing that gay characters will come to the MCU as well, so this would be potentially a way to introduce one. Now, like I said, I am kind of torn on some of these. The Nebula, Star-Lord thing, I think could really be potentially great, and very obviously the next development in Nebula's character, but as long as it stays non-romantic, I'm cool with it. I think the Drax one would be great as a teaser to the next movie, but if that becomes a major plot point within this film, it could be way too many plot points, and it's just too many happy reunions back to back to back, and so I'd kind of like to see that more as a a teaser to Eternals than anything else. But the Rocket stuff I think would be great. I think that'd be a great sub-story to the search for Gamora. Kind of these events are kind of what interrupts that search and becomes the main plot point, but still somehow it all ties back to getting to Gamora, and everyone has kind of a happy ending in the end. So that's kind of my thoughts and feelings on it. Like I said, I like the ideas. There's a lot that we could get from this, but it needs to be balanced and not just thrown in there for thrown in there sakes, because I think it could be way too many plot points for a movie. But before my video gets too long, I didn't really want to talk about all this stuff too much. Just kind of want to give you kind of a general thoughts and feelings based upon that tweet. But it's amazing how much information can be shoved into 150 characters or less. But I would love to hear your thoughts on how you think these rumors are going to be used, if they're going to be used, or if it's just that rumor, a fake leak. So definitely leave your comments down below and let me know your thoughts and feelings about what was said in the tweet and what you think of my predictions and thoughts regarding the tweet. Of course, there will be definitely more information to become out as we move further into the Phase 4 of the MCU and get more information, so there will be more videos to come. So if you want those from me, definitely subscribe and set those alerts to get notified. I have kind of been really busy this last week with work, so it has been a very long week since my last upload, so I'm going to probably pump out a couple more videos here really quickly as well, so make sure you get those with the subscription and the alerts. However, that's all I have for you guys. Thank you for watching. I love you all 3,000. And until next time, have a marvelous day. Bye, friend.